Welcome to episode number 23 of the Better with Brock podcast. I'm here with Leah Simmons, and before she kind of jumps in, I want to, give a bit of backstory of how we met. We met, last weekend?
Yes.
Last weekend at the Hermés Fit event, and I typically do not like those events. Not particularly those events, but I guess networking events. Well, we were there to run classes, but I struggle with, the meeting people and say, let's catch up for coffee and you're never going to do it, or let's catch up soon and it never happens. So it was really nice to meet you and other trainers as well that were like super nice, genuine, like loving fitness, on the same journey, helping people and stuff. So it was awesome to meet you. Do you want to give a little intro? Because you were running some hat balance classes, belt stretching. But that's not an accurate picture of what you do. And I was teaching a HIIT class, and I don't do a drop of cardio in my life, and right. I'm doing a HIIT class. So give us a little intro of.
I was definitely thrown out of my comfort zone in those classes, 100%. I was like, I'm not going to pass up this opportunity for a challenge. Obviously, the brand was one that I was like, I'm so intrigued as to what they were about to offer. Plus, I'd done a little bit of research for the ones that they'd done around the world, and I just thought, what a great thing to be involved in. So I was brought in as like a yoga teacher. So I'm not a traditional yoga teacher. I teach Kundalini yoga, which is a completely different form of yoga than what people are kind of, used to. It focuses a lot more on the breath, a lot more on moving energy. It's more of it's a physical yoga, but it's much more around mindset and those sorts of repetitive things. So when they were like, we want you to sort of put together a yoga class using our silk scarves, we want you to put together a stretch class using the belts, and this sort of hat balance class, I was like, okay. Plus they gave me like a 2-minute reference of what they'd done in the past, so we had to create a 30-minute class around it. But it was great, and to be honest, you were the first person that because we were on day one together at the same time. You were the first person that I'd seen in our orange outfits. And I was like, oh my God, thank God there's somebody else here that's feeling half as like ridiculous as me. But I think over the 3 days, it was a really, really fun, innovative event and a way to kind of blend fashion and fitness in a fun way for people, I think, if they'd never experienced anything like that. And it was fun, and I got to meet you. And I'm the same with you. I don't generally use those sorts of events to, spruik my brand or who I am or anything. I'm very much about the person, and if there is a rapport or something, or if there's like a common interest that is identified from the outset, well, let's take it from there. Do you know what I mean? I don't feel like just because we're all fitness trainers, them thrown into some, we should all like be best friends. I think it was good, and there was definitely a synergy having spoken to you. And I think we didn't even talk about fitness. We talked about your family and kids and a whole bunch of stuff. And that to me is where those, that commonality is really born. So
I think that's kind of like the last thing I want to talk about as well. Same. Like, we don't want to sit down and go, how many push-ups can you do?
No, because you'll win that one. For sure.
So it was nice to just like talk and just hang out as friends, because as I said, like sometimes it's just not like that. But coming from fitness, how did you get in here? Because I learned a few things about you coming into this podcast. That you were...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
From the internet?
That you were a DJ for 18 years in London.
Yes.
So take us like from the start. Like, I guess if you want to go back to,
decades.
Where you grew up, how you grew up, and then how you transitioned from being a DJ to going into fitness.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I won't bore you with Leah's life story. Suffice to say that, I had a very rich upbringing, as in rich, fulfilling. It was great. I've got a sister who I adore. But I think I was slightly unconventional from the get-go. I always had different ideas. I always had a different kind of outlook. I was very, very musical as a child. So learned to play the piano when I was like 3-4 years old. constantly singing, always the performer,
Yeah.
always the leader, always doing plays and random things. So there was definitely a future of something on stage somewhere for Leah. And when I left school, all my friends went off to uni. I was like, I want to become a DJ. I'd really just fallen in love with that whole kind of, it was the mid-90s. And so women, I think, were starting to find their feet in music. I started DJing, I was dating a DJ. I started DJing. I found out I was quite good at it. I was getting all of these jobs. I was one of 2 female DJs in Sydney at the time, and it was all vinyl. It was, there was none of this like push a button and stuff, just mixes. It was, you had to have skills.
Yeah, these days DJs, I'm like, are you just pressing play and then just like dancing around?
They're pressing play, and I think they're pressing beat sync.
Make it work.
Just does it together. I don't know. I can't say that for certain. I'm not in the scene anymore. But back then it was definitely all manual, and you had to listen. So I'd go home and I'd key all of my records. I'd sit at the piano and I'd figure out what key they were in, and so that I could make the listening experience that much more. I was just like, I was always a nerd, no matter what I was doing, whether it was music or fitness or thing. I love learning, and I love information, and I love absorbing things and seeing how far I can kind of take things and mashing things up. And that's always been my MO. And so my DJ career led me quite amazingly, so I have to say, to London. And the way that happened was I was working for a radio station in Sydney. I was the marketing manager, and I also had a radio show. And my colleagues encouraged me to enter this competition called the Red Bull Music Academy.
Okay.
And it was the first one that they were running. It was in the year 2000, and it was open globally. And the prize, if you won, was 2 weeks in a global city somewhere, being mentored by some of the most amazing people, the top of their field in the music industry. So it was like A&R people for record labels. It was the guy that invented the Moog synthesizer. It was this sort of 2-week think tank. And they had about 3,000 people from around the world apply. 16 people got selected, and I was one of them. And it was supposed to be in New York. 2 days before I was supposed to leave, September 11 happened. Yeah. And which was devastating, obviously.
Yeah.
But so they did a whole kind of rethink, and they postponed it to London the following January. So off I went to London on this 2-week thing. I went for 6 weeks because I have family over there. I was 24 years old, and I was like, this is where I want to be. This is the epicenter of the music industry, not Sydney. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's the beach industry and fitness.
Totally.
And that lifestyle.
And it's just small, and it's not our fault. It's great. The quality of life is amazing, and it's my home. But if you want to go and realize a dream in that, everybody that I looked up to was over there. Every label that I loved was over there. And after these 2 weeks, I was like, that's it, I'm moving here. And I literally did. I came home, I packed up my stuff, and I was like, I'm out. And off I went to London. Big dreams, big expectations, thinking that I could just stroll into Radio 1 and be like, I worked at a radio station in Sydney.
Yeah, you guys need a marketing manager?
Yeah, totally. Because no social media, none of that. It was all just, I have a dream. What are the steps I'm going to take to realise it? And I'm not going to let anybody tell me that I can't do it.
Yeah.
So off I went, and 9 months later, still working in a clothing shop on Portobello Road, going, one day it's going to be tomorrow. They're going to.
But I think, sorry to jump in. I think that's the beauty of no social media and kind of
100%.
having this courage to do that, because you see people all successful and stuff, and it can often prevent you from going because you see, the success, and then you go, well, if I move to London, I'm going to be here and I have to work my way up. But I feel like not having that is like potentially you would have saw social media and all that kind of stuff, and maybe how hard it was, and you would have not done it.
Yes.
And I feel like that's what people do these days. Is
It's
just
also,
look at things and they get paralyzed by fear.
Everything is also available now to everybody. So, and what I'm saying is, if you wanted something back then, you really needed to be creative in the way that you went off to get it. And there was a drive in you that separated people that just went, oh, I see it, I will apply for it, do you know what I mean? The pool was smaller, but it was more competitive because it was like the things that I had to do to try and get to this point.
Well, you packed up your bags, you know, and then just
I
moved
to a
countries.
completely foreign country, whereas if I had probably gone, you know, looked at someone's vlog on the pros and the cons of living in London, I'd be like, well, that's too scary. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, that costs too much. Where am I going to live? Yeah.
Oh, and because of my, I guess, naivety, or, you know, I wouldn't call it ignorance. It was just, we didn't have, all I had in my mind was this one goal, and I'm going to go and see if I can, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So eventually a job came up at a record label. I'd never worked at a record label before in my life, but I thought, I'm going to apply, and I got the job. And so I ended up living in London, living my dream. I ran the world's largest independent breakbeat label at the age of 24. I was looking after some massive international acts. We were touring all around Europe. We would do, like, it was, I was living in a fairy tale.
Yeah, that's the dream. That's why you moved.
That's the dream, you know? And it was work hard, play really, really hard. Harder than I've ever played in my life.
Yeah, the music scene is notorious for that.
And no social media, so no evidence of anything. Do you know what I mean? It was being in the moment. There was no, you weren't being filmed.
Yeah.
It was just, it was pure unadulterated experience and presence. And it was so much fun. And I had so many firsts in my life, sort of between the age of 24 and 29. And I cherish those times to have lived without the pressure of social media.
Yeah. Well, I feel like now people just kind of do things for the gram, you know? Like they're like partying and something like that. Oh, did you get it? And then they just sit down and like edit it and post it.
They're
sad. Not in the moment.
It actually, that breaks my heart to feel like all of these moments that you see are fake moments. And look, to be honest with you, this actually led me into the whole KAAIAA journey is... being a perpetrator of that fake life, you know, but that's later on in my fitness story. But look, every all good things must come to an end, and I realised that I was about to turn 30, that I can't keep going on this train. It will end up crashing.
It's a fast train.
It's a fast train to nowhere. And every time I'd come back to Australia, my mum would she'd take one look at me and be like, you need to come with me and, you know, get some exercise and get some sunshine. And
so were you working out at the time? Or
no,
fitness wasn't.
Absolutely not. My cardio was on a dance floor, baby.
Which isn't too bad of a form of cardio.
But you know, I wasn't eating anything. I was probably drinking way too much. There was other stuff going on. Like it was, you know, it was what I was living the dream of a 20-something who wasn't in the fitness industry, who was obsessed with the music industry, and you know, I was just having these amazing experiences, but. I started to feel like the time in it was kind of coming to an end. My sister was about to have her first baby. I was kind of starting to go, oh, what am I doing with my life? Like, I can't keep doing this. And so I ended up moving back to Australia just before I turned 30. And around about this time was when iTunes was just starting to become a thing. And so the music industry was shifting anyway from this very physical, you know, you'd go into a record store and you'd scan all the music and you'd choose really carefully because records were expensive, and, you know, it wasn't just download a song for $1. That didn't exist. And so our industry relied on people buying music and then the artists touring to support all of that. And the bottom started to fall out of especially the independent record label industry, because all of a sudden you could have whatever song you wanted available to you to download. There was no more experiential going into the record store. So the whole thing was shifting, and I was like, right, this is a sign it's time for me to go into something new. And I was like, what else do I love doing? And at the time, my mum had introduced me to Pilates as a method, and it wasn't popular. It was 2006. It was a thing that, you know, you either did when you were old to like rehab a hip replacement or something, or you did as like an ex-ballet dancer coming out, because that's what we're an ex-dancer. But, it's funny now I look back on it, so people like, professional surfers, professional basketball players, all the rugby league teams, they were all doing it. It just wasn't called Pilates. It was called core conditioning.
Yeah. It sounds, I guess for like rugby players and surfers and stuff, it sounds less like Pilates was more maybe like a female thing.
Totally. And there's all that stigma around the language and everything, but you're all doing it. You know what I mean? So, but I really, really resonated with the method, and it was the one thing that actually I could see real results in my physique. I felt taller when I'd come out of a class. Like it did something where because I love the focus on postural alignment and spine health. I think it's really, really important to look after your flexibility.
yeah, you're looking at me, all the warning signs are there. Yes. You're a walking problem,
Yes, we don't want to end up like a pretzel.
Yeah,
okay?
I'm sitting here trying to fold myself in half and
and I think Joseph Pilates said you're only as young as your spine is healthy, because it really is. Like if you let that go and you just focus on your superficial muscles and you don't bring the training down into all those little muscles in and around your spine and start training from the inside out, you really feel it. It's like a tree that has this seemingly really strong trunk on the outside but is hollow on the inside. You could just push it over. And
I felt very hollow this morning. So to give you a bit of context, I did the KAAIAA class at what's the spot called?
At Virtus in
Virtus.
Bondi Beach.
Yeah, so 9 a.m. we had a class, and I was actually telling Leah, it's like I'm strong, but I couldn't hold my arms out. So we were doing, how do you explain the pose?
So
just arms out
it's
to
an
the
extended
side.
arm hold.
Okay,
Yeah.
Extended arm hold, pinkies kind of to the sky.
Yeah, so you want to turn everything on so, we're not getting lazy in our positions. And
I could not last. Like, I think I had like a 2-minute run at the start, but it was, 11 minutes, 9 minutes. So I was like coming in and out, back and down. There was like sweat dripping down my face. My back was like super sweaty. My hip flexors were sore. My spine, well, not spine, like my erectors were sore.
Yes.
My arms were sore. I was like sweating. I was like looking around to see if everyone else was sweating. And there was like, people weren't really sweating. And then, that lady in front of us, straight out.
Okay, so, there's a lot to unpack in that. Because first of all, first time. Second of all, you came in with an expectation that it was going to be easier than it was.
I did think it was going to be a lot easier.
So expectations, as we know, are the breeding ground for disappointment.
Yeah.
Like
I was very disappointed in myself. Yeah.
But they're going to potentially hinder your experience because you've already put a series of caveats on what you think is going to be the outcome. And, thirdly, it's something that you're not used to, you're not conditioned to it, you haven't done it before, it's new.
I haven't done Pilates before. Like, not that that's a Pilates class, that's a KAAIAA class.
Yes.
Right? It's an experience.
But it combines
I haven't
a whole
done
bunch of
anything
stuff.
like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So all of those things combined are going to set off those receptors in your mind that either, you can't do this, it's hard, you're going to feel the sensations all over your body. So I try to not refer to that as pain per se, because pain is subjective. What's painful for you, your pain threshold is different to my pain threshold. We also associate the word pain with something that's negative, where sometimes, after you go through that initial period of discomfort, the outcome is really, really positive.
It's almost always positive.
Yeah. So what I like to do is to break it down into a series of sensations. Okay, where am I feeling this in my body? And isn't that interesting? And meet that sensation with a bit of curiosity rather than like judgment and going, oh, I'm really shit at this. Because you're not, right? Let's look at all the things that you've done really well. And I've just sat here for 2 minutes with my arms out. Let's celebrate that. Do I need a rest? Perhaps, but maybe let's go back into it and see if I can, start to build on that experience. And as I was saying to you before, the whole class is a metaphor for life. I'm not trying to build up your traps or, there's that's the secondary thing. I'm not trying to do that. What I'm hoping is going to happen is that you can sit in a period of discomfort in your life for, even if it's just one more breath cycle, longer than you thought you would be able to, and then go, oh my gosh, if I could do that, then how else in my life can I show up for myself in a way that is beyond what I think? Because it's all a mental mind game. Do you know what I mean? We put limits around what we are truly capable of because of fear. And that's normal. It's not like we're doing anything that any other human being isn't doing. And it's, it comes from that sort of very primal fight or flight where we want to keep ourselves safe. What does safety look like? Is our life in danger anymore on a day-to-day basis? No. But our physical reactions to when things aren't going our way, or if we're, taken down a different road to somewhere that's unknown, that response is the same.
Still primal.
It's still primal, And what would happen, and I think with KAAAIA, what it's really trying to show people is that there's a space in between the stimulus and then your response to it that you have control over. And it's in that space that you want to try and build capacity and resilience and trust in your own ability to be able to actually push through that perceived limit, because it's all just perceived. There's really no threat there except what's in your own mind. And KAAAIA is a tool that you can refer to on any day, at any given time, when you are faced with a challenge or something that makes you uncomfortable, to meet that challenge with a little bit more patience, a little bit more compassion, less judgment, less resistance, and a bit more openness, because it's in those moments, I think, where you really truly understand yourself and then can open you up to everything that life has to offer you, rather than living life with these blinkers and these sort of, so that's why I created it. It really, it was all of the things and all of the practices that I was doing in my life on a daily basis that kept me together.
So you started Pilates.
Yep.
Originally your mum got you into it, and then how did you form the rest of the putting everything together? So
winding back, decided that I wanted to become a Pilates teacher, did my PT training, did my Pilates training, took a couple of years, was teaching in my Pilates studio in Double Bay, was loving it, absolutely loving it, building up a really solid client base, seeing people's transformations. The one thing, though, that really baffled me was that this was when social media started to become a thing.
So what year are we in?
We are in 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
Instagram, Facebook, just starting. My handle was Body by Leah Simmons. So I was very focused on
the body,
the physical, because that's what we can see. It's tangible. It's what you can touch and feel. And, it's like this looked like this day and now it looks like this. Obviously it's doing something else. And what we were being fed, I think, was that, this particular or this body type, this ideal equals health. So if you look a certain way, then you're going to feel a certain way, and fit equals healthy, and all of this sort of stuff. And that's what we were. That's what we were taught.
There's still a lot of people in that world.
Well, there are, but I'm like, thank goodness. I think that the narrative is starting to be questioned. It's not so much that it's wrong. It's just, why do we think that? And if my experience isn't that, does that make my experience not valid? Because I have to be honest, I was right into that. And what I was experiencing was that the pressure to maintain this body meant that I was engaging in practices that would not have been deemed healthy at all. Right? So what's the winner? I look this way, therefore I am this way, or I look this way despite not being, this perfect picture of health. If I could show you, and I'm now starting to talk about the things that I was doing behind the scenes to preserve this body. And, I was just saying to my friend yesterday, back in those days, we were all talking about publications. There was your day on a plate. Do you remember your day on a plate, Brock, when you'd get asked? No, you'd never. Oh, you're too young. They would ask you, what does your day on a plate look like? So you'd have to list all of the things that you would eat in a day as a, I mean, God forbid I should actually put what I was or not consuming in the day. So what I would do, and this was where I really kind of met myself for the first time, I would put together this amazing plate of food, eggs, tomato, like sauerkraut, the most, I'd be counting all the protein and just the right amount of this and blah, 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 blah. Shoot it, throw it in the bin. And you laugh. Yeah. But that is sad.
Well, I laugh because I question it because there's still things, well, it's not really like day on a plate, but now it's like people are posting or influencers, fitness influencers, like what I eat in a day.
Well, it's the same.
And I see the same thing. It's like that stuff and I'm like, surely you are not eating that.
So, but this is what in my mind would gain, I mean, like where I was going in my mind mentally was just so far away from where I should have been. So it was like, this is going to get, first of all, the most amount of likes. Yeah. This is not going to get me into trouble. This is maybe even in the back of my mind what I want to be eating. Like all these crazy thoughts. But the bare fact was that I would throw it in the bin. I wouldn't eat it. I wasn't eating. I was engaging in terrible health practices. My sleep was suffering. I was disconnected from myself, my son, my partner. I mean, I was so far away from being healthy, but I looked healthy. Yeah. And this is when I started really questioning, what did it mean to be truly fit? What does it mean to be truly healthy? Where does health come from? And is healthy just a physical feeling? Like, what about your mental health? I mean, mental health wasn't even a conversation back then. We weren't really even talking about it in the mainstream. And so what happened was I was not only noticing that I was having these thoughts and these questions, but my clients would come in whinging about their relationship, whinging about this, whinging about that. It was all whinging. Meanwhile, they're looking amazing. And I'm like, everybody's feeling this.
Yeah, it's a massive imbalance.
It's a huge imbalance. And so then I started going, well, where does happiness come from? What does it take to be happy? Where, are they mutually exclusive? What's one without the other? Is health and happiness? And so all these questions. And then I met my my husband, who's now my ex-husband, but he lived in Bali. And through this kind of amazing, I guess, whatever you want to call it, from the universe, I ended up spending a lot of time over there. And that's a very, very spiritual place. It's a very healing place. I got introduced to lots of different modalities that started to have an effect on me mentally and emotionally. So breath work, meditation. I'd never meditated before. It just wasn't part of who I was. I was like, I can't sit still. I'm like a little Energizer bunny. And I constantly need to be busy and moving. And, that first foray into just sitting with my own thoughts, horrific.
I struggled with that today.
Yeah. It's because you actually start to realise that you're not a nice person. Do you know what I mean? All the thoughts, and I'm like, if I met me, would I be friends with me? No. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And so there was all of these things, and Adrian, my husband at the time, was like, he kind of gave me an ultimatum before we moved to Bali. He was like, you need to have a look at your situation because it's becoming untenable for me. You're angry all the time. You're disconnected. You've just, and you can't even see it. And that was my wake up call. So I was like, right, I'm in. I'll do whatever I need to do to really look at the hard truths. Someone's saying this to me for a reason. It's time for me to step up and have a look. And the most powerful practice that I found over there was Kundalini yoga, and that's where the arm hold comes from. Is that really pivotal moment in a practice, or when you're looking at yourself, where you're faced with you. Do you know what I mean? You're looking into a mirror, and you're like, do I like what I see? And if I want to make change, what am I willing to do to make those changes? Nobody else is going to change me. I have responsibility for this. I'm accepting responsibility for where I am, and I'm the only one that can change it. And there's power in that, because there is. You know what I mean? Once you accept responsibility for where you're at, then you have the power to be able to change it.
Yeah.
And so I started doing all of these practices, bringing them into my day. We were doing breathwork sessions and ice baths and yoga and meditation, all this sort of stuff. And all of a sudden, you know, the whole day's gone with all these things. And I was feeling amazing, and my life was changing, and I was becoming a much calmer, more centered, more present person. And I was like, but the teacher in me was like, I need to share this. Like, I need to be able to share this with the world. This is what my clients have been missing. This is what people have been missing, this combo. But there was nothing. There was no workout out there that sort of combined all of it. It was always, there's your gym session, or there's your yoga session, there's a meditation, there's that over there. It was all separate. And I was like, who's got the time to do all of these things in a day?
4 different hours of the day.
Exactly, and expensive, and you know. So I was like, I'm going to create a workout that combines all of those different modalities into one, even if you just get a taste of it all, and I'm going to smash it into 45 minutes. And that's what I did with KAAAIAA. It's 4 pillars of health, 4 modalities, 45 minutes, in you're done. And then obviously the DJ in me is like, well, this needs a killer soundtrack because I need that motivation too. So, you know, what music, mix the music, there's a big journey. It's an experience.
Yeah.
And it's had some incredible feedback, and just the momentum behind it has been so good because people are really connecting to, I guess, themselves. For the first time. They're really understanding their own potential. They are realising that they're much stronger than they think, and that they've actually been their own roadblock or their own obstacle in their own growth. And as I guess, you know, as that can be quite a hard truth to hear, but it can also be a very liberating one, because you're like, oh my God, now I know I can...
Yeah, well, once you know what's wrong, you can make a change.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I felt something today. I haven't shared this with you yet. But so when I was sitting there, and I can't remember when it was. I think it was like it was after the workout, when we were kind of closing our eyes and stuff, and we were trying to think about things. And I feel stockpiled up with thoughts.
Yes.
And I feel like I felt like these are all in the way, and I can't do the meditating thing because I've never been able to meditate, right? So I have this morning routine thing. Yeah, you're probably laughing because you probably already know this just by looking at me. But like, I have a morning routine which I kind of see as my meditation thing. So I call it. It was originally called like the gratitude list, right? And then someone was like, call it the thank bank or something like that. So I was like, okay.
The thank bank.
Yeah, I know what it sounds like, yes. And that's why I thought it was funny. So anyway, like I kind of like rattle off these things like. I have a list of family members and friends that I read, I'm grateful for, and then I say these things that I want to be, or that I am, or that I kind of, you know.
So like an affirmation.
Like I am thoughtful, I am generous, I am, you know, all these kinds of things. I have like the list gets longer every day. It's like, now it takes me like 15 minutes to read out. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I have the time for this today. And then I go through and ask for the things that I am aspiring for, and then I read all these quotes, like some from the Bible, some from things that I pick up, some from books that I'm reading and stuff. So
I love that.
So that's kind of like my version of meditation,
yes.
right? But I can never sit still and just kind of think. Like I feel so kind of, I don't know what the word is, like just overwhelmed with thoughts that when we were doing that, I can see where you wanted me to be, but I felt like that was like 50 thoughts away, and I need more than 45 minutes to sit there. With like, that's one thing I faced today, just from having, I guess, that space, because my life feels very full at the moment, and that was like an experience where you're saying I am the roadblock. Yeah,
I mean, I guess it comes down to having an outcome, right? So meditation isn't about clearing your mind or, you know, it's about being able to just observe yourself and your thoughts in that moment without any judgment. So even if there are 45 thoughts in front of it and you've got no hope of connecting, you might not even hear me, what I'm saying, and that's okay. It's pure observation and becoming aware of the fact that you are sitting here, the fact that there is this thought machine that is running constantly in your mind. And once you become the observer of that, then you realize that you are not your thoughts, because you're actually observing your thoughts. So who is it that is sitting there in observation? That's you, you know, and your thoughts are a combination of your ancestors, your upbringing, people around you, what's right in front of you today, what was in front of you a year ago. It is this kind of pool, swamp sometimes of just subconscious stuff and conscious stuff and worries and fears and concerns and conditioning and beliefs and value. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into why we think the way that we think. And it gets programmed into us at a very, very young age when we're actually we don't have the rational capability to process and choose whether or not we want to retain that thought as a belief. So that's how we get brought up, you know? And sometimes in meditation, and the more consistently you can do it, you can sit there and actually question those thoughts. Is this something that I really, really believe? Or is this something that is potentially going to limit my growth? You know, I think just reflecting back on the last couple of years, especially with COVID and how our lives have been thrust into this really, really confronting moment where we've been thrown together with people 24 hours a day and, you know, or away from people. We've started to really question everything, authority, the media, the things that we get fed, and we've had to really start to rely on our own sort of radar around what's truth for us and what's not truth. And I think being able to sit in that space where we know that the things that are going through our mind, those thoughts, we can pick and choose which ones that we want to either you know, carry out, or the ones that don't particularly have much relevance to us anymore. And meditation allows those thoughts to start to slow down and kind of become ordered, if so to speak. And like anything, consistency is key. So you can't do one meditation and be like, I can't do this, I'm terrible at it. Like, of course you're going to be, you know.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you go, I'm committed. Start with 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be, you know, and just have no expectation of an outcome. There is no, if you sit there and have your mind just this junky kind of trash can of whatever of stuff, great. You've sat there for 5 minutes. Yeah. There is no such thing as a bad meditation. Yeah. The fact that you showed up and did it and committed to it, that's where you need to pat yourself on the back. And over time, it will get... I mean, you weren't born like this. Come on. Well, were you? I don't know. You had to work for your muscles.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like that. It's building a muscle. And it's all it is. It is meditation, sitting with yourself and, you know, showering yourself in a little bit of... And it doesn't have to be this love affair to start off with. It just has to be a bit of patience and a bit of kindness. I'm doing the best that I can with the things that I've been given, and know that I just want to walk out of today a little bit better than I did yesterday. And if I didn't, tomorrow is another day. Everything is impermanent. Like, you don't have to carry, you know, we always have the opportunity in every moment to switch or pivot or change or... You know, it is literally one breath away.
Yeah, I was always I'm better now, believe it or not, than when I was previously. Like when I was a face-to-face personal trainer, you know, which, like, you know, you can relate to in terms of just being clients and, you know, all the time. I was too busy to even think of that. Like now that I've transitioned from face-to-face online.
Yes.
I did that because, well, the primary reason was I wanted more time to learn and actually become a better trainer. So more education, so time to study and stuff, because I didn't have that time. But I kind of see it as, I guess I also slowed down as well because I had time to, like, I felt like I was frustrated with myself because I was just in the physical, like you were saying, I was just sessions, book people in. Oh, I got a half an hour, I can make that busier. So it was kind of like, how can I make my life busier? And I suppose that's a manifestation of like...
And what are you avoiding by trying to fill your day with all of this stuff? I think those are the questions as well. It's like, it's the space between the spaces that we need to look at. Like, why am I trying to, what am I scared of seeing? What am I not wanting to confront? What is
Yeah.
it that I don't want to create space for
Yeah.
right now? Those are the things that we need to actually put some energy and attention into.
Well, I was making myself busy in the things that I knew I was good at.
Right.
But say, like, even just from a business perspective, I wanted to leverage, like, scalability, being able to coach people online and
Yes.
stuff. But that was an area that I struggled with because I don't know anything about online coaching. Like, it was early. There was no blueprint. There was no, like, oh, this is what you do. You just have a website and la, la, la. There was none of that. So I was like, I wanted to go there in my mind, but I was like, oh, it's easy and it's, like, more guaranteed to just get sessions and get clients. So it kind of prolonged, like, I got in my own way once again. I prolonged where I wanted to go by making myself busy doing the easy thing where I needed to do the hard thing. And I suppose that's what you kind of talk about with KAAIAA is like that space in between,
definitely.
like, knowing what to do, not knowing what to do, and kind of.
And also know that there's a
caught in that.
human being behind this as well. And I was faced exactly with the same issue as you. So I opened a studio when I moved back to Australia. I had been sort of road testing KAAIAA. It was a different version. It was called something different in Bali. Okay. And after the first year of COVID, we moved back to Australia just to visit family. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna teach a few classes just to see how it's received in my hometown. And it just kind of took off. And I said to Adrian, my husband at the time, I was like, I really want to stay and see if I can make a go of this because I feel like it's got some potential. And he was like, great. So we stayed. I found a little studio space in Bondi. 3 months of teaching. Amazing. Started to build the community. Classes were going well. Lockdown. And I was like, okay, this is new. Do you know what I mean? What do I do? Studio had to close. Just started getting momentum. I was like, I'd never turned on Zoom in my life. Yeah. Like I didn't have a clue what it was. And I said because, you know, I'm quite impulsive sometimes and I will say things and I'm like a speak first, think later about, you know, kind of person. I said to because I didn't want to lose the momentum that I'd gained. And I also knew that during this period of isolation, I really wanted to start to try and look after my clients' mental health because it's so important during that time as well as their physical health. And I knew that KAAIAA did that and they knew it. Yeah. So I said, right, during the lockdown, I'm going to teach a free online class every single morning until the lockdown is finished. I mean, who does that?
Oh, no.
I was like, it's going to go for 2 weeks. Yeah. 78 days later, I'm still showing up every single morning. In the meantime, this thing had started growing and I had to learn how to use Zoom and my whole like setup, everything as we went. I had days where everything. I mean, internet would go off, microphone would fall down, batteries ran out. Like it was an absolute shit show, but it was so funny and, you know, it was happening in the moment. But it got to the point 2 months into it, I was having, you know, up to 700 people a day globally joining my free Zoom class. And I don't even know if it was for the workout. I think it was for this space that people knew they could come to and feel supported, feel seen, feel heard, feel connected, feel part of a community. You know, I'd always open it with like a daggy kind of 80s, because I'm a diehard 80s fan, some, you know, ridiculous 80s song, dancing around because I wanted people to feel comfortable and like if I'm going to be a fool, then you have permission to be a fool. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you know, open the door. And let's all kind of come and be fools together in this really crazy time. I mean, look at what's happening in the world. It's so bizarre. And then we do the workout, but then afterwards I'd sit and just listen. And I think as a teacher, we don't listen enough to our clients. And
so were they able to speak?
Yeah. So
you didn't, like, no one muted or?
No, anything? Everybody was muted, but you know, who wants to share something? Okay, such and such wants to share. Great. And everybody could hear it. And, you know, people were typing in the chat. And I mean, it was just amazing. And, I mean, some of the stories that came out of this experience, there was a woman who hadn't left her house in 18 months. And she had this incredible fear of, I mean, it just culminated in so much. And my mantra, as you can see in KAAIAA, is, can you see that? I can do this, I am doing this. And it's about being present and it's about believing in yourself And it's about just, and it's one more breath, one more rep, one more breath, one more rep. And we were on the call together with this woman, and there was about 500 people on the call, and we were on the phone with her, and she walked out of her front door in front of everyone, and she was, I can do this, I am doing this. And she walked out to the gate, and she walked down her street about 500 meters, and we were cheering, and she was there, and she was doing it.
Wow.
I mean, like, I get teary thinking about, and there was stories like that every day. People finding the courage to leave an abusive relationship. People finding the courage and the self-belief to, you know, ask for a promotion. People just finding the courage to love themselves a little bit more. And literally daily there was stories. My Instagram was just getting inundated with just, I have to share with you, I had to share with you, this happened. And so when the lockdown sort of was coming to an end, I was like, no.
Stay
so
inside,
weird.
everyone.
Totally. My captured audience.
Yeah, it's not safe.
But I was like, okay, I can't abandon all of these people when the studio opens again.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? So I created an online platform, and I created a virtual studio, which we're sitting in at the moment. And I created this online space where people could still come and experience all the workouts and connect in the same way that they did, and have those shared experiences. And what I did find was that, you know, I love online. It's obviously allowed me to scale, and it brings in a global audience. But for me, I still love being in a room with people as well. And today was one of the first classes that I taught in a long time. And the energy is palpable, especially with the practice that I do. It's, you feel it, and people feed off that group energy. It's like a real motivating kind of thing. It's like there's an electricity in the air, and
It's like camaraderie. You're all striving towards the same thing.
Yes.
Like, towards the end, people were making sounds. They were being loud. Like, there was a lady beside me that was kind of laughing, so maybe she was a bit uncomfortable. But
No. So that was Leisha. She's a huge client of mine online.
Oh, right. Okay.
And
She's a laugher?
No.
That's
So
her thing?
I said to her, I was like, Leisha, you were because people it's all a release, right? Laughing, crying.
Yeah, I was all
sounds.
for
It's
it. I
not-
was like, it's just expression.
She actually shared with me. She said, you know what, Leah? I am going in next week for some pretty life-changing surgery. I'm going to be out for a month. And she said, when you said pain is the gateway to transformation, I started laughing because I was so scared of this surgery that I'm going to have. And now I realize that the reason I'm having it is to transform my life, to bring a little bit more comfortability. And, you know, this is going to change me physically, and it's going to change my life. And I started laughing because you've literally just flipped that switch in my head.
Right.
So now I see it as nothing to be afraid of. It is something that is literally going to be this, my life is going to be better after this. And that's why I started laughing.
Wow.
And so, you know, it's all of these realizations where you have these conversations in your mind, and you're the one that does the healing for you. Nobody else is doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not standing there with a gun to your head asking you to stand like with your arms out. You're doing it because you know down at some base level that you have more in the tank, you have more to give, you have more potential, you have more strength, more capacity, more, you know. And if I can do that, what else can I do in my life?
Yeah, what else can I do? It kind of invites you in for what else you can do.
Yes.
I love that quote that you were saying. I actually forgot it. I wanted to ask you about it. The pain is the gateway
to transformation.
I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah, because it is. It's through, if you think about when pressure is applied to certain things, things need to restructure. If you think about how a butterfly, you know, is formed, if you think about how a diamond is formed, it's carbon under pressure. Things under pressure are forced to restructure themselves. And look at what gets born from it. It's this beautiful metamorphosis of really having to go through that tight squeeze, that bottleneck of it's uncomfortable. And that's when most people flame out. I don't know if you've seen the Kubler-Ross change curve.
No.
But so it tracks what happens during change. And so you'll have an event, you'll have this kind of questioning, there'll be denial, there'll be anger, there'll be frustration. You're going down, down, down. You get to the bottom. Most people in that moment will it's called flame out. They'll run back to the comfortability of their old habit, their old behavior, their old pattern. If you can sit in that space, just beyond what you think, you start to move up the curve. You start to move up into a place where you experiment around what this could look like for my life. You start to move up into that place of self-belief, and it starts to gain momentum. And then that is where this change, this transformation really starts to manifest in your life. And you can be in different stages of it in different areas of your life all the time. So it's not just like, oh, I'm here and that's where I am. But to understand that there is this curve can maybe help you stick in that bottom bit for a little bit longer, because you know that there's going to be a light, there's going to be a big upswing at the end of that tunnel. And I always come back to, if something's really difficult, something's really hard, if we're going through a tough time, if there's a lot of pain, am I okay? Am I okay? Am I okay? Yeah, I'm okay. I can go through this a little bit longer. You know, the world's not falling down. My arms aren't going to fall off. Like, they're not.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So why do you think people flame out? Because personally, I'm very much love that ideology. Like I think the ways that my life has changed has been, they've kind of had to be in extreme circumstance where it's like very hard, or like, you know, like when I first moved, so I was born in Christchurch, New Zealand, and we had earthquakes. So I was the last year of high school. There was not much going on. And I was like, well, what do I do? And actually I was in a band at the time. I was in a boy band. Right?
A boy band?
A boy band, yeah, 5 singers. And we were from Christchurch, and I was like, we need to push, because like, who knows where Christchurch is?
Yes.
Like no one, people don't even know that it exists. If anywhere in New Zealand, Auckland, like, and then we can think about bigger places later, maybe Australia, maybe America. I was thinking big when I was young.
That's
and I was
so
like,
good.
so like I had a Honda Civic, right? My dad bought it for me off my brother's ex-girlfriend for $500. It was like rusty piece of shit. Had no registration, no warrant, and an oil leak. I took it the day before I left. No, on the day I left, and I was like, can I get a warrant? And he goes, nah, you're going to need like to wait till Monday because you need too much help. And I said, well, I got a ferry to catch on Saturday. So I just left. No warrant, no rego, all my stuff packed in a car. Dad gave me $800. When I arrived to Auckland, I had to spend it on the car to fix it. So I had no money, right? But like, so that was hard. That was like emotionally hard, right? I didn't know anyone in Auckland. I slept on a friend, or I had a friend, I slept on his couch for 2 months, probably a month too long that he liked, right? And I was sleeping on, it wasn't a bed, it was kind of like a coffee table with a mattress on it beside the dishwasher. So it was like, you know, my life was like a bit of mayhem. But on the back of that, I learned how to ask for things, like to go and get things. I had no job, right? So I was a singer, but like, we all know musicians, if you don't make it, you don't make much money. So I had like no money, and I had no friends or anything. So in that time of hardship, I was like crying myself to sleep most nights, right? And I was reading every night. I was like really trying to believe in myself. But that was like one of the hard times in my life. But that's where I grew the most in terms of like being independent or making money to pay bills or pay my friend that I was sleeping on the couch with, like all that type of stuff. Like I'm a huge fan of that. And I didn't flame out once. But why do you think people flame out? Because
I don't think people have a goal or a compass that they can see beyond the situation that they're in. You had this vision. You were like, I want to be here, right? So what are the steps I need to take to get there? And you had that in the back of your mind the whole time. You had a purpose. And I don't think most people have a purpose. So they reach this bottom part where all they can see is the hard, and there's no light at the end of a tunnel. And, you know, I don't think that, I think it's, when people talk about finding your purpose, it's not as easy as some people think. There's a lot of people that aren't born with a purpose. I knew at a very young age that although it wasn't clear in terms of health and wellness, I was meant to be a teacher. of something. I was always going to be somebody that, you know, I loved being on stage. I loved performing, whatever capacity that was. But, you know, my sister, unclear. No specific kind of direction, you know, no real passion, nothing. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that people are so, especially nowadays, we define purpose as having some big global impact where it doesn't have to be that. Your purpose might be being the best homemaker or the best mother or the best, you know, it could be, and whatever that looks like to you, that could be your purpose. And there's a lot of integrity in that purpose. It could just be, my purpose right now is figuring out what my purpose is. Do you know what I mean? And it can change.
Well, you have to spend time figuring it out.
That's
like,
right.
Even with my one, like I spent years, like I told you I had a little experience at, well, not little experience, it was actually years of my life, but at church from like 14 to 22.
Yes.
I was heavily involved. I was there almost every day. Like gave up sport for it and like music was my thing. I was singing all the time. But I spent so many, and like I really don't care that I say this, like I cried a lot. Like I had so much stuff to deal with.
Yes.
Kind of like the thoughts I was saying, like I had today in the class. Like I had to get them out of the way before I could focus on anything else. And I still have those thoughts there. But like it was like I had stuff I had to deal with from like when I was young, I lost my mum. So that sort of stuff, that kind of never goes. But like,
no, but you learn to manage
I chipped
it.
away at it. And I was like trying to make sense of it. Like, okay, what does that mean? Like, does that, you know, because I like as soon as that happened, I was like, I'll just live to make my mum proud, right? But then that worked as a fuel, but then that's kind of empty as well because it's like, well, she would already be proud.
Of course.
So then I was just, as soon as I thought of that, I was like, well, then what else do I strive for? I got no other purpose. It was just that. So like I spent time chipping away at that. Like purpose doesn't come overnight. You really have to think about it. And like,
absolutely.
I kind of like had to break down to, I guess, you know, ashes for the phoenix to rise, if you put it that way. So I could actually rise and be like, okay, I have a greater purpose than just making my mum proud, which is already proud. You know, I want to do this and I want to do that.
And I think it's so important that people share their stories because for every inspiring story like this where someone's actually found their purpose and are living it in a meaningful way, there's 20 stories of people that just have descended down into the other side of that, which is like addiction and, you know, and I don't think that we should gloss over how difficult it is sometimes to attach to a purpose, to find a purpose, to live with purpose. What does it even mean to have a set of values that we live to? I mean, one of the things that I say in the class is say what you mean what you say. And, you know, it's a simple saying, but easier said than done. You know, we live in a society where expectation and perception is everything. How we are perceived by somebody else 9 times out of 10 is going to be the driving force behind our behaviors. It's not how we think of ourselves. It's how is what I do going to come across to you.
Yeah.
And why do I care about that? You know what I mean? What you think of me is none of my business. And that is a universal truth. If we could all sort of subscribe to that, I think we could walk around with a little bit more self-belief rather than trying to fit into these little molds of, you know, how we think people. Because to be honest with you, I don't even think people think about other people as much as we think we're thought about. That makes any
exactly.
sense at all.
Yeah, well, I think like
You
to
know?
put it simpler, like no one cares about you.
No one
type of
cares
thing.
about
But,
you.
like we have, like,
Exactly.
yeah, like I say that a lot when people ask me, like, oh, I have gym anxiety, or like, you know, I think people are looking
No
at me.
one's looking
I'm like,
at
"Mate,
you."
No one even remembers you. Like they're
Exactly.
so fixated on themselves, you know. But we're thinking,
Yeah.
oh, everyone's looking at me. But
I know.
The truth is, no one really cares.
No, and you know, and if we put the same level of attention on what other people think of us onto what we think of us, oh my God, like we'd have a lot more integrity. We'd be walking around with a lot more self-belief, a lot more compassion for ourselves, a lot more self-love. But look, I love the fact that now we're having these conversations. I love the fact that there is a huge focus on mental well-being and emotional health. I love the fact that when we talk about fitness now and good health, it encompasses and includes things like, you know, having balanced emotions, connecting to your heart, all of these things that would have been perceived as being so woo-woo and so taboo, even 10 years ago, is now becoming so mainstream and so talked about and so necessary. I think to, you know, it's coming into schools, meditation and mindfulness practices coming into schools. I mean, we were still getting our underpants checked when I was at school, like lifting up my skirt, make sure I had grey underpants on. I mean, mind blown, you know what I mean? How far we've come, thank God. So I'm really encouraged around the conversations that we're having, and I sometimes go on to podcasts with like 20-something, and they ask me about the universe, and I'm like, God, when I was 20, the universe, like what was that? That was never even a conversation that we're having. So I think it's heading in the right direction, and I love that we can sit here as two physical fitness trainers and have an esoteric conversation about how we feel, and that not be weird. I love the fact that, you know, all of these places, these gyms and are bringing in meditation and yoga and things into their spaces that really can support people on a different level as well as just physical fitness. It really makes me think that we're heading in the right direction and we're going to be okay.
Yeah, I think we're also like acknowledging the root problem. I think often fitness, and I've, you know, experienced this personally, but fitness is often just like a manifestation of what's going on. Like you're trying to, you know, let's say it's pretty common for like people to be insecure about their bodies, right? So they will just work really hard to fix that in the gym by putting on muscle, maybe dropping body fat, which can be great for self-esteem and confidence, but it doesn't get to the root problem of why you may feel unhappy, or, you know, on a deep level, not just, oh, my arms, you know, I wish they were, you know, 2 centimeters higher.
But why do you wish they were 2 centimeters higher? Who are you comparing yourself to? And is that a societal problem of we've projected that this is the ideal, like, you know, there's so much in the space now with body positivity, and we're seeing all different shapes and sizes of women on catwalks, in advertising, and I think it's really, really important. And you know what's really interesting is women of my age, so I'm in my middle 40s, we were brought up on that very thin, everything was airbrushed. You know, we had this real kind of 90s, early 2000s aesthetic of what was beautiful. And I now see 20-year-olds walking down the street so confident in their bodies, crop tops and, you know, everything's kind of out, and they're just walking around like, look at me, I'm owning all this. Whereas women my age would be like, oh, I couldn't. Because it's just something it's a belief that's ingrained in you. And I'm loving watching just all the confidence that is oozing out of our youth, our millennials. It makes me really happy to see that they are embracing shapes, sizes, you know, all of it. It's
I think it's health at all levels as well. Like you're saying, it's not just the physical aspect, because you could have that physical, you know, look like an absolute beast, but have zero confidence. 100%. You know, and now, but I guess one thing I hope is it doesn't go the other way, where we're just so confident and we're taking away from the physical health aspects. Because I see that sort of stuff too, and I'm all for body positivity, but I'm also all for actually being healthy, which is like a different aspect, you know. Like you
want to make sure that it's not laziness disguised as you know, own it.
Yeah, like no, I just love myself enough. It's like, well, you know, there's a difference between
because obesity is a thing and health practices. But look, again, can't please everybody all of the time. Do you? And that's, I think, and what we share, as long as it's evidence based in so much as you know, I like a little bit of scientific backing in the things that I like to share, because that makes me feel comfortable and credible, and that it's coming from a place of, you know, it's been peer reviewed, and so nothing that I do is made up. I don't pluck it out of thin air.
Yeah, well, actually, that's what I really enjoyed, like your exercise selection today. Like if we go on like the physical level, because that's why I don't like group classes sometimes, because it's very just get a sweat. And there's no thought of, are we actually moving correctly, or are we choosing good exercises?
That's why I talk all the time, because I'm cueing constantly.
Yeah, I loved it.
I do upper, lower, push, pull. You know, I like isometric holds. I like eccentric and concentric phases. I'm still very much rooted in good technique, and safety first, and also modifications. If you can't do something correctly, come into a position where you can feel the benefit, but still, so that you're not compromising your safety or your technique. And again, I think this is one of the things that you have to face when you're teaching online, is that I can't see a lot of the people, right? Their videos are off. Yeah. So I'm just having to trust in my own ability to cue, their own ability to listen, my ability to demonstrate. And hopefully that all kind of culminates in some form of a correct technique.
Yeah. But as long as your principles are correct and you're cueing correctly, then it's safe.
Exactly.
Because I have a similar thing, right? So when people sign up to Team Brock Ashby, whatever program they decide, there's so I've done like a detailed maybe 1 minute to, depending on the exercise, sometimes they take longer, 1 minute to 3 or 4 minutes tutorial on how to do it. And it's not just me doing it and look at me. It's like me coaching a client through it. So it's like so many hours doing that. I'd ask like a PT friend, hey man, can I come film you? I'm just gonna, so we're gonna do a dumbbell chest press with a neutral grip, then a pronated grip, then a 45 degree.
There's so many different variations.
So I would do all the videos. So they all have them. But once again, I'm not watching, you
have to just...
Sarah in America do her workouts. She just has access to the app. And
Sarah, if you're watching, we're watching.
Nail it. Yeah. But as like you're saying, as long as it's based in, efficacy and it's efficient and it works, then you're good.
And you know what? And I think that's what... I'm also don't try and reinvent the wheel. A squat is a squat. Oh, yeah. Why are we trying to make it fancy? Why are we trying to deconstruct it? Why are we trying to do it's an effective workout. It's a functional movement. It's I feel like there's so much trickery nowadays in everybody's trying to have a point of difference. And I know that me sitting here having created something, but I just think with movement, less is more in 100%. Terms of, go to what works. You can still make it fun. But it doesn't always have to be new and tricky because I feel like that's where you start to lose people. I find, if people can't see themselves in space, half the people don't even know their left from their right.
No. Some people think they're doing a squat perfectly and you're looking at them going, that's not a great squat.
Totally. And so, I try to keep it as fun as possible, but as, not complicated, and really try and bring movements in that people would do on a day-to-day basis. So bending and lifting up, lots of rotation, lateral side stuff, squatting, and because that's what's going to support people moving forward. It's what we do, exactly. So,
well, that's what I dislike about social media, and we're on social media, so I guess we have this backing that we can talk confidently from. But even with TikTok and stuff, the videos that are going viral are people doing crazy exercises that no one would ever do in real life, and it's almost the harder the better.
Yes.
Or the more complex the better. I'm standing on one leg, but I'm holding a kettlebell here and a dumbbell here, and I'm doing a deadlift.
Having a cup of tea.
Yeah. It's how many things can I do at once?
Yes.
But it's the way I say it, the more complex something is, the more unstable it is.
Yes.
And when you're less stable, as you know, you're not strong.
And someone's going to go and try and do it. And I think that's where I start going, oh, you're doing this. Why are you doing this? It's for shock value. It's an engagement post. It's an engagement post. And, we're all impressed. It's great. But you wouldn't do this in every day. But again, look, I'm not here to judge anybody else's techniques. All I know is that what's worked for me and what's worked for KAAAIAA and what's worked for my clients and your clients, obviously, is this kind of tried and tested, results-driven. Yeah. Because it's basically around, people just want results,
Yeah, that's what they pay for.
That's what they pay for. That's what they come for. And they're getting it. So job done.
Yeah, don't change it.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing I loved about your class that I want to touch on a little bit is I was telling you about the spiritual aspect.
Yes.
So as you know, I spent from 14 to 22 in church heavily. I was a singer, I was writing songs, I was speaking, not necessarily preaching, but I was speaking, right? Sharing things. Wrote songs out of experience, had all these kind of great times through it, and grew a lot personally. So from 14 to 22, that is usually when you will go partying, go drinking, pursue girls, pursue men, whatever you want to do. I was in church, right? I was writing songs, and I think that's actually where I grew up a lot, because I had a lot of mentors at the time that were like 30, 40, 50, 60, speaking wisdom over me. And usually that's when you're not being wise, right? You're just kind of learning, right? So I was like learning in a different way.
Learning through your mistakes.
Yeah. I was learning through, I guess, foresight. And this is...
Through other people's mistakes.
This is a great way to live, So I was doing that. But today when I was sitting there, I was... So I used to... And this is going to get slightly, I guess... churchy, if you want to put it that way, but so when I was sitting there with my hands out like this, so at church often a lot, you would feel like warmth on your hands, right? And that can be whatever you're experiencing. It could be Jesus, it could be the Holy Spirit, it could be whatever, or maybe your just hands are warm, right? But you have this kind of sensation, I should say, and I had that today, and maybe that was just because my arms were throbbing, or
or was it?
Yeah, that's right. Or but I kind of felt it. I guess what I see it as now is like energy, kind of like in my hands.
100%.
And I had this kind of, my eyes were closed and stuff, and I had to kind of get comfortable with it, because I haven't done it in a while, sat there with my eyes closed and really be with my thoughts while my arms are up there. And I was kind of thinking things, but I had this, I guess, spiritual feeling, and this, I guess, spiritual encouragement, you can do it type of thing, because this kind of warm, I guess, it felt as if someone was grabbing my hands and holding them up. I know this sounds weird, but yeah.
That's so amazing. Wow.
Yeah, but I had this feeling, and the thoughts that were in my head, it helped me, because I felt okay, I need to get them out of the way so I can get out of my own way type of thing. I kind of made all these decisions for things that I had to think, but really quick, that I've been maybe laying on for 1 or 2 weeks, decisions that I have to make. And I was bang, 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 maybe 3 or 4 answered, and then that that was, I guess, a spiritual
How long do you think
experience
you would
that
have
I had.
procrastinated or ruminated on these decisions
100%.
had you not been pushed into a position where you were right, I'm here, I'm doing it?
Yeah.
I mean, amazing, and I first of all, you were contending with a whole lot of new stuff.
Yeah,
so
that's a very
I haven't
new environment for me.
I haven't sat here with my eyes closed. I haven't sat here with my arms out. Everything's hurting. I'm sweating. I've just done a workout. All the breath, all of that stuff. So there's all of those things to take you out of the present moment. And then you've got you're now being catapulted back to a feeling that you had when you were at a really pivotal time in your life. Wow, what is that? Why am I now getting this, and why am I thinking about this is amazing. And you're right, what you said is exactly right. It's energy. It is energy. You are energy. You are made of it. And we determine the quality of the energy that we cultivate for ourselves with every decision we make, with every thought that we have, with every emotion. Emotion is energy. Thoughts are energy, and they manifest in actions and behaviors. And so those actions and behaviors are either going to align with living to your truth, living a set of values, living whatever, or you're going to have this thing called cognitive dissonance, where it's saying one thing and doing another. Yeah. And the amount of energy that takes is mind-blowing. That's why we feel depleted at the end of the day. That's why we feel, we don't notice it, but if you've got anything that's going on in your life that is living in your head, a tough conversation you need to have, a habit that you want to break, a recurring pattern, a relationship that you want to get out of, the amount of energy that takes out of your day, out of your life is enormous. Yeah. No wonder we're feeling, so we reach for that 3 o'clock chocolate hit or the coffee or the whatever it is. We try and get those dopamine levels, those serotonin levels back up, where actually it's our own behaviors that is driving this energy slump. We need to address that. It's that root. That's what we were talking about. It's the root cause, and it's, I've had this so many times in my life where you'll ruminate on something and you will create scenarios around something in your head or having to do something, the 3,000 different outcomes, the what if this happens, we go into the future and and then you spend a day doing that and oh my God and blah, blah, and then you actually go and do the thing and it's never as bad as you
No
think.
way.
No way, never, right? Never. And you're like, why the hell did I spend so much time thinking about all the ways that it could go wrong when actually I've just gone and done it?
Yeah, I think actually there's a word for it. I think it might be, I think it's the zygonic or Zargonic effect, but it's like having open loopholes. And you just need to close them because, like, it's exactly what you're talking
you've
about.
got to plug them.
Yeah, you have to stop it.
Yeah.
Or else it's just.
Yeah, we have
keep,
these feedback loops.
Yeah,
and
the more we leave them, the more weight it kind of harbors. I guess if you look at it like if you're in a boat and there's holes everywhere, like if you just leave them, you're just going to keep sinking. But you need to like.
Yep, we need to plug them all up.
Them up.
And the more we subscribe to these sort of feedback loops, they create neural pathways in our brain, right? And it's like they're trenches.
Yeah.
And so you can reprogram your brain. They've now proven that the brain is malleable. There's a thing called neuroplasticity. So we can actually fire new synapses, new connections, new neural pathways. And things like breath work is amazing to do that. Flooding the body with oxygen, that real oxygen hit disrupting our natural breath cycle, retention of carbon dioxide. There's all these things that are starting to come into the mainstream where we can actually train our brain and improve our brain health, get it firing a little bit more, those connections, those synapses. And these are the things that are going to start to help us form new habits. And the habitual things that we do in our life are going to determine the quality of our life. If you're constantly reaching for the sugar, if you're smoking, if you're alcohol, if you're this and that, the other, and I'm not saying, oh my God, don't go and, no one's asking you to be a monk.
Yeah, right.
I'm certainly not a monk. I like to have fun. I like to go out and do my thing, but it's not a habit. It's not a habitual thing that I have no control over. It's not something that controls me. Do you know what I mean? It's not where I go to get my dopamine hit. It's not where I go to get my serotonin or those feel-good hormones.
Yeah, your fulfillment.
Yeah. And unfortunately in society, those are the things that people go, because it's easy, it's a quick fix, it's that instant gratification. It's as bad as social media and getting those likes and,
So
that
easy.
gives that instant thing, but it's not lasting. It's actually damaging. And what we want to try and do is to take back control over our quality of life and not be at the mercy of bad habits or and so for me that combination of practices that have gone into a KAAIAA class were the things that allowed me to take back control of my own happiness and my own well-being and my own mind and my own heart. It really connected me to how I was feeling, how I wanted to feel. Being able to look at myself in the mirror and know that even when I wasn't feeling great, I still was worthy of love and being loved and accepting love and giving love, and the people around me would openly receive that. And that's a really, really nice feeling. So
Yeah. I like to look at the decisions that we make as, I kind of had not really a vision, but like a kind of a picture, like when you walk through, let's say, the bush. Every time you walk a path, it gets more, it gets easier to see. The grass parts ways and there's, more of a path on the ground. The more you walk that, the easier it gets to see and follow that path. Like when you make a decision, the first time you have no idea what it's like. And you're like, I'll try this. And you do it once. And then if you do it 2 times and 3 times, but then when you do it 10 times, it's that like neuroplasticity thing you're saying, you can keep walking down that path and it becomes familiar. But then if you want to say that's a habit now and say it's a bad habit, you're always reaching for a drink. And you reach for a drink again. Like for a month, then you need to change it. It's like walking into a lost bush. You're like, this is unfamiliar, don't know what's around the corner, it could be very hard. But the more you do it, like the more that path becomes clear and the previous path begins to grow over and become more lost.
And, and I think to that point of that analogy, and I love it so much, is, we carve our paths and that can be for good habits or bad habits.
Yeah.
If we want to deviate off that path into a different thing, sometimes we just stop, because no decision or inaction is also an action. If that makes sense. Yeah. So we don't have to replace this way with a different way all the time. Maybe we just have to replace this way with no way
Yeah,
for a minute.
yeah.
Just stop for
like
a second.
that. Yeah.
And you don't have to know where you want to go next, but you just have to know that you don't want to go that way anymore.
Yeah.
And take some time to really figure out what it feels like to have options. You know, I know that this is not serving me, this direction, this habit, this pattern. I don't know where I want to go next. By choosing to not go down that path, I've actually already made a decision. So that's an action, that's a choice. And I'm just going to sit for a little bit and just be with this new way of being. And then hopefully the new behavior, the new habit, the new pathway will show itself. It's not going to be me forcing my way through everything all of the time.
Yeah.
It's going to I'm going to allow myself to feel into it a little bit more. And, you know, and back to your point, I feel like we always feel like we want to be busy and doing things. You know, who am I if I'm not doing 20 things at once? And believe me, I'm the same as well.
Yeah, you're like, I'm lazy, or, you know, I should be doing more.
But doing nothing is a choice. And I said this the other day to my class. I was like, you know, when we feel like nothing's happening, we feel like nothing's happening. But actually, when nothing is happening, we've actually created space for all of the things that we've set up in our life to happen, to actually happen.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We've actually sat back and gone, okay, now I'm just going to enjoy being in this moment where things can actually happen. Rather than throwing another thing in the way or pivoting again or going in a different direction. We don't ever allow time and space for things to actually just manifest.
But that's so hard. Like, say, like...
See, that's
like
a belief.
Okay, no. So let me finish my sentence. I'm saying that's hard when you have, like, say, social media, which is something that's easy just to grab and fill in time.
Yes.
Like, it's hard to do nothing to allow things to happen. Like I wasn't saying personally. Like, obviously, I do struggle with, like, just sitting there being, but... Like, yeah, we don't have, like, boredom anymore. Like,
no, we don't.
So my wife pulls me up on it all the time because I'm like, it's quiet, right? And I'm like, let's put some music on. Yeah. And she's like, just sit there.
Yeah.
Like, or like in the car.
To be comfortable in silence.
Yeah. I'm not the best at that because I'm like, it's just nice to have music on. You know, I'm like, just put some music on, or, you know, I'm just going to do this thing or do that thing. But...
So now that you know that this is potentially a little block for you, not being able to sit in silence or not being able to sit with your thoughts, if I were you, I would be like, okay, I'm going to take myself off for like a 3-day silent retreat.
Is that like not speaking or just...
Not speaking, no tech, being with your thoughts. I know.
I'll have to plan
Challenging.
that. I might do that when the baby's born. Make that nice and convenient.
Your wife is going to kill me. Yeah. No, but you know what I mean? Because it's like now you're like, okay, what are the harder things in my life? It's easy. I'm good at all these things. I'm successful in all of these areas. I know that I'm actually not getting fulfillment from continually doing those things over and over because I know that I can do them. What would really allow me to harness a little bit more of my own potential is doing something that I know I'm terrible at, that is going to be hard and that I'm probably going to dislike for the entirety of it. But oh my God, when I come out of that, if I do it, it's like fasting or doing any of those things that, you know, the minute that you tell someone that you can't have something, you just want it all the time. Yeah. If you're deprived of it, then, oh my God, give me that thing. Do you know what I mean? Flip that conversation. I like to think about fasting not as a deprivation, but it's a fast track to, you know, potential, a fast track to a breakthrough. It's a fast track, you know, and it's 3 days of your life or it's 5 days of your life or it's whatever you want to do. And it doesn't have to be a terrible experience. It's the same thing, 3 days of silence. Oh my God, imagine how much I'm going to know myself, right?
I'm scared of 3 days. Sounds terrifying.
You know, they did this study. I can't remember. I'll have to Google it or whatever. But they did a study in the States. I think it was in the 90s or the early 2000s, where they hooked people up to an electric shock machine that delivered them like a pretty decent voltage of electric shock. And they gave them two options. They said you can either sit for 15 minutes with yourself, with your thoughts, or you can choose to shock yourself and come out of the experiment early. 68% of people chose to inflict physical pain by way of an electric shock, just so they wouldn't have to sit with themselves for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
15 minutes. This is how scared of our own psyche and our own thoughts we are. That's what I find interesting.
What would you take? Would you take the shot?
Oh, 15 minutes all day, every day. I love sitting with my own thoughts. I find it's like a carnival because I'm not attached to it. I'm not in it. I'm a spectator now at my thoughts. And it doesn't mean that they stop. It doesn't mean that they even get any less ludicrous or ridiculous. It just means that I don't attach to them anymore as becoming either an action, a behavior, and sometimes they do, believe me, and you're about to embark on this. I have a 4-year-old and a 13-year-old, and sometimes they'll push me to the point where I will act without being able to catch that thought, and I'll scream at them or I'll yell or something will come out, and then I'll be like, had I, would I have done that differently? Hell yeah. But we learn from it. And let me tell you, the amount of time I now sit in debating myself over whether I want to do something, or sitting in that spiral of self-deprecation, or sitting in that rabbit hole of, whatever it is I get taken, has been drastically reduced from like 2 hours to 2 minutes. And that's the muscle. That's the work. When I don't think we're designed to always have positive thoughts. I just don't think that that's the way that we are manufactured. I do believe, however, that we can choose how long we want to sit with those negative thoughts and ask ourselves, is this thought going to add value to my life, or is it going to take away? It's as simple as that. And if you can approach it from a pragmatic kind of rational place like that, then I think in certain situations, I mean, obviously there's going to be things like trauma and grief and heartbreak and all those things. And yes, feel the full spectrum of those emotions, go through it, release, cry, do all those things. Don't let it define you. I mean, how often have we been in the moment where it was like, oh my God, you've broken up with someone, it's the worst day of your life, the worst things that ever happened, and then 6 months later you're like, that was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Pain is the only way to transformation.
Totally. It's like you change your perspective and you change your view of a situation, and all we have is our relationship to the event. And that goes for everything. And time is a great healer. You can reduce the amount of time simply by changing your view. But how do we keep that view consistent? It's through practices that raise the energy levels in all of those areas of our life, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, keeping in good health, keeping that energy flowing, feeling good about ourselves, cultivating, good beliefs. And so KAAIAA is a tool to be able to help you keep those energy levels high so that you can be making good decisions, thinking good thoughts, feeling good emotions, and,
So what would you say to someone that struggles with dropping things like that, like dropping events? Because I'm all for, like, I guess my piece of advice would be like yours, to express them. Like, I'm a big crier.
Yes.
Like, my wedding day was horrendous. I was just crying my face off. There's not many good photos.
Amazing.
Like, the aisle walk is so bad. I was like, my wife's favorite one is, like, I can show you later, but I'm just like, my face is all screwed up and like, it was terrible. Like, I'm a big express myself kind of guy.
Yes.
Like, I'll just like, I don't get angry too much, but I will go quiet if I like have to deal with something, because probably until I need to cry it out. It's just like
I think it's beautiful that you allow yourself to be vulnerable like that.
Yeah, if I have things to deal with, like, and I have the same with my friend. Like, he's like, we'll cry it out, and then we need a big sleep, and then we'll wake up, and it's like we're a new person. Like, we have.
Do you think is that a cultural thing for you? Was your family emotional like that? Did they express themselves?
You know what? Not really.
No.
So not really. Like, my dad's not very emotional.
Yeah.
Like we've always expressed ourselves. Like, Dad taught me guitar. Like
Okay.
I guess musically in that way. But I think that I got this way to be honest, through like church.
Through the church,
yeah, because it was just like I did like I was a rugby player, classic New Zealand guy, want to be in the All Blacks, play sport, rah rah rah, right?
Yeah,
but then
masculine, macho.
And then when I got into music and started writing songs and started like going to church and stuff, I was open to this kind of different energy that was like singing, that was being a bit more kind of, I guess, open-minded and like dealing with my stuff. And, you know, like once you've like cried in front of 500 people, and you're on stage with a guitar, like
come at me,
and
live.
you can't sing, exactly.
Whatever,
exactly.
I got you.
You can handle anything, right?
Totally.
So I was just like, I'm just going to go through it.
Because
so that's how I go through
strength
things.
through vulnerability, huge. Do you know what I mean? I think when you are, you don't become stronger by being your most confident self. You become stronger by being your most vulnerable, exposed self. When people can see you and you're like, holy shit, how do I deal with this? That's where you find that inner strength. That's where you find that inner fire. That's where you find that inner ability in yourself to be like, okay, I've got two choices here. I can crumble or I can really, you know. And sometimes, I mean, all crying and laughing and screaming. It's just an energy release. So you're just shifting something that needs to move through your body, and it's the way that you're expressing it. And I want to normalize crying.
Yeah, me too.
And men crying.
I'm a huge fan.
And I'm sure I'll ask your wife.
Yeah.
I'll wait till your baby is born.
Yeah, no,
oh my God.
Yeah, no, she gets it. But I think that, yeah, like after every kind of breakdown or whatever, I get clarity. I get like,
that's beautiful.
yeah, like you say, like strength. Like, okay, I know what to do now.
Yeah.
You know, not that it's all about doing stuff, but like I feel like more capable. Like that something's kind of out of the way, which is probably like my thing. But like, what would you say your advice would be if people can't drop it? Because I think it's like people have to experience their things. Like,
yes.
Like if they're addicted to alcohol because of some event, you know, they're having alcohol to kind of block it up and put it away. But they haven't dealt with it yet. And they could be 50, 60 years old and still haven't dealt with something that happened when they were 20.
Yeah. So my number one piece of advice is just show up. Come as you are. Do not have any expectations around anything beyond sitting on that mat, period. Because just showing up and knowing that it might not be perfect, it might not look perfect, it might not feel perfect, but I'm here is half the battle won. Because not a lot of people even do that. You know, so if you've made it to the mat, fucking bravo.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
You're already halfway there.
Yeah.
The second one is, you know, compassion. So don't have any expectations over doing anything perfectly, having to keep up with, you know, you are your own barometer. Only you know where you're at and what you're capable of in that moment. And if you last for 30 seconds, well done. Yeah. If you do 2 push-ups, well done. You know what I mean? As long as you can sit there and go, I really tried and I gave it my best and I'm going to show up tomorrow and do it again. So there's 5 principles of KAAIAA and they are courage, which is just show up, okay? Commitment, just keep doing it day in, day out, you know? Compassion for yourself, all right? Consciousness, so meet yourself and then greet yourself, because it's different every day, and then community, which is share. So really engage people around you and be vulnerable in that space, because 9.5 times out of 10, they will resonate because they're going through something as well that they might not have the courage to be able to talk about. And you opening up your door will help open up somebody else's door. And that's beautiful. That connection, I think, is a really important aspect of anybody's growth. We are not designed to go it alone.
Yeah.
We are social animals. We are designed to move in packs. We are designed to be in communities, to foster villages, to be raised by everyone. I feel like why we've kind of retreated is there's a bit of an information overload now. We are so exposed to everything that's happening on the other side of the planet. You know, there's this feeling of helplessness. There's this feeling of overwhelm. There's this feeling of, well, what can I do? I'm only one person. Focus on yourself, your own growth. be the best you that you can be. Start local, start small. There's a million things that you can do in your own community to help your fellow human. Do a random act of kindness once a week. Pay it forward. Someone's coffee behind you once a week. You know, do those tiny little things, and I promise you, you're going to start feeling so much better about yourself, and that is contagious. Your energy field, once you start going out with that sort of vibe, you know, your vibe attracts your tribe and all that kind of stuff, whatever. It's true.
Yeah, it is true.
And that's what we say about raising your vibration. So emotions have a frequency. And shame, guilt, fear, anger live right down around 50 hertz. Not great. That's your low vibe. You know, as you start to move up, you come into places of courage and acceptance and willingness and love, 528 hertz, all the way up to, what do you think is number one at the top, 900 hertz?
Happiness.
Gratitude.
Oh, gratitude.
That's why gratitude is such a powerful thing to invoke. That's why gratitude practices, because instantly it catapults you up into that amazing space of feeling good. If you can be grateful about something in your life when you're feeling low, it instantly makes you feel better. And
yeah, that's why I read that thing every morning.
Yeah.
I feel like it makes me, like I had like another vision thing. I guess I'm quite symbolic in my head. Like it makes me feel like steel. Like if you wake up grateful, you know, and especially I think it's a bit of a superpower in the hardship type of thing, like losing my mum, like when you're young. You feel like even that makes me feel steel because I've dealt with all that kind of stuff. Like you feel like once you go through that, you can handle quite a lot of things.
100%.
Like almost everything. You know?
And you don't wish that on anybody. No, but you just say, thank you for showing me, you know, this was for unveiling my superpower. And there's always gratitude to be found in every situation, even though it feels like, you know, despair, total despair. Yeah. And it might not be in the moment. It might be years later. It could be whatever. But every opportunity in your life is one to learn from and one to be grateful for. Yeah,
and when you start your day with that, like you feel like you can kind of take on anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how you want to start your day. You don't want to be like, I heard this great podcast the other day with Jay Shetty and Dr. Daniel Amen, who has this brain health thing, and he was like, you know, the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is tell myself that today is going to be a great day. Because what it does is your words feed your subconscious, and your subconscious is basically programming what you're going to be thinking during that day. If you wake up going, today is going to be crappy, well, guess what? Today is going to be crappy. You know? Yeah. If you wake up at least giving yourself the best chance going, today is going to be a great day, then, you know, at least you've sort of set yourself up in your mind. And it's so simple to do.
And then, also, like when you set the tone for the day, like when you take control, it eliminates other things. Like if you just reach for your phone first thing and you see that, I don't know, the Queen has died, you know, then you've already let that kind of dictate the way that you're thinking that day. Obviously, it's a sad time, but it was probably a bad example. But like,
but you're right.
But like, if you told yourself, wake up and you were grateful and you had some sort of routine, or you just, you know, I'm gonna have a great day today. If you saw that, it's gonna have a different effect than if you were just an open book. Like, I'm ready to be influenced. What's the day gonna bring? Okay,
and how much do we let
day.
other people's situations influence our day before we even open our eyes properly? You know, we've got 5 people's stories and in our mind. We haven't even had a chance to assimilate into our day. Like I've got my daughter back at the moment. I do a month on, a month off with her, and I'm not ashamed to say it, she sleeps in my bed. She's 4. I know I'm never having any more children, so this is the last opportunity that I'm going to get with her. And she, you know, I don't have her all the time. And let me tell you, sleep is a myth when she's in my bed for me. She is doing circle work. She's like taking the covers down to one end. She's coming, and she's fast asleep, by the way. I'm having the worst. I've got a king size bed. I get the strip edge side of it because she's constantly pushing into me. And I wake up in the morning, I've got a foot in my eye. She's like dribbled all over me. And I literally can't not look at her with just this overwhelming sense of love and gratitude because, you know, even though I've had no sleep and I've got a black eye.
Hey, Gaia.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just like, I just savor every single second that I have with her and know that it's going to be fleeting in the grand scheme of things. Like I already see my 13-year-old drifting off into teenage land and I'm like, bye. It was nice knowing you.
Yeah, that's a different world.
You know, and so I'm now much more present with her because I'm like, this is fleeting. I am going to look back on these moments and wish that I'd had her toe up my nose a bit more.
You feel lonely
or
in
that
the
I
king
hadn't pushed her away, you
Yeah.
know? So those are the lessons that I learned, is be present with all of those things, find gratitude for all of those things, even if they seem completely horrible at the time. There's going to be some time in your life where you look back and you go, I'm really glad that happened, you know, because it was either a really great experience or it taught me this. It's plain and simple.
Yeah. Kind of like, what's the saying? Like you don't lose, you learn type of
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
You either win or you learn.
You either win or you learn. I said,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So, and it's true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
100%.
So,
I got 3 questions that I just want to wrap it up with.
Okay.
Since we're getting towards the end.
Yes.
They're not crazy. It's just, so this is the Better with Brock podcast, right? So I love fitness, but I see it as a tool of self-development.
Yes.
Like I fell in love with self-development. Like when I jumped in that Honda Civic and drove up to Auckland and didn't have any friends, I kind of lent on books for a while. And I just dove into books, and I felt like that kind of saved me for a while. And even though the self-help industry can be a bit, you know, motivation-y and a bit like that, it kind of saved me at the time.
Yeah.
And now I kind of take what I like and leave what I don't like. But I'm a big fan of self-development. So I just have a few questions around that. So even though you already have the quote on your sleeve there about, you know, I can do anything, what is one quote that you think has helped you become better?
So my 101-year-old, well, he nearly got to 101. My 100-year-old grandfather.
Wow.
Yes.
What a run.
I know, right? He was 2 months shy of his 101st birthday. Good old Grandpa Jack. He passed away about 7 years ago. But he said 2 things to me. He was a man of few words, but they were wise words. Number 1, go for the dough. That didn't eventuate in my life. But anyway, number 2, and this has stuck with me, don't expect. And I could never, I sort of was like, don't get it, you know, what does that mean? And I think it really comes down to this whole thing that we have around expectation is don't expect, to me, means you can't control how other people react to you. You can only control how you react to in a situation. And that has been so freeing for me. You know, no expectations, no attachments, focus on me. And, you know, it was really powerful, and it took me quite a long time to understand what that meant for me. But I think he had it, you know, in the bag. So yeah, don't expect.
I like that. Second one, do you have a book that has helped you become better?
Yes. I loved The Alchemist. I think it's a fantastic story. I think it's a great story. I've read it to my children. It's like a universal thing. I just love the journey that he goes on and all those, you know, those realizations. So that's been amazing. I mean, I too, like you, am just a book nerd. I love. Yeah, I wouldn't say there's any one definitive book. I take pieces from different ones and kind of use them to write the book of my own life.
Yeah.
You know, and but I love diving into everything from non-fiction to fiction to self-development stuff to, you know, murder mysteries, to whatever it is. Like if I'm just feeling like I'm reading a great book at the moment called Conversations. Oh, what is it? Oh my God, now I can't remember it. Confessions of the Bird or Conference of the Birds. And it's a story about how in the 70s this group of actors, actually Helen Mirren was one of the actors, they did this incredible odyssey through Africa. And they just stopped in all these amazing places and would put out a carpet and just perform, and all the different cultural things that they came up against. I mean, so there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'm reading. But yes, The Alchemist, I think, for me, was a very powerful book. It's one that I come back to a lot.
Yeah,
so
nice.
I read it a lot.
I just finished one from Ryan Holiday called Courage is Calling. And I'm on a second one called, well, not a second book, but he's got like a series of the four kind of, I don't know, like pillars of stoicism type of thing.
Yes.
But a quote that I love at the moment from that book is, and it's really simple, but for me, it's inspiring at the moment to find, I guess for me to, at the moment, I feel like I'm at a place where I need to find hard things and pursue them. Where, like when I first went online, it's a new world and it's difficult. But then you find that you have more time.
Yes.
And you can be complacent or you can find hard things and pursue them. So I feel like I'm at this place and it's a quote, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? Yeah. It's super simple, but I was just like, man, I feel like I'm called. Like, pick me.
Totally.
Pick
Well,
me.
it's like, so another one of my favorite books that you just reminded me was a book called Untamed by a woman called Glennon Doyle.
Okay.
And she has a podcast and her biggest thing was we can do hard things.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's what the podcast is called because it's about, fuck that. Just because it's hard, we can do hard things, you know. And
I think we're made for hard
we
things.
are made for hard things. And I think we've become soft as we've evolved. And now we're starting to realise that it's in us. It's in our DNA. It's part of who we are. We're resilient. We have, we have courage. And, we can do these things that are, I mean, God, life isn't hard. Imagine if we had to go out and kill a wildebeest and drag it through the, please.
Yeah. Actually, I've been talking about this lately because like life has gone from like survival.
Yes.
So we've overcome that. Like there's food in abundance now.
For some of us, yeah.
For that's a privileged thing to say. For most of us,
Yes.
right? In the Western world, we are like food, like we don't have to hunt for food. So like survival is like kind of like ticked off in terms of we can go to Woolworths and buy food and we're okay. But now it's like, what's next? So it's kind of like this fulfillment, kind of like, because like.
But there's now this whole, there's actually a pushback against that whole very cushy life, and people are starting to go back to living off grid and living off the land and really just using what they need, and this kind of overconsumption, over-commercialized, over-commoditized is starting to become a little bit. There's a backlash against it, and let's return to the land, let's return to nature, let's return to our roots. Let's
I like that movement.
Go back to living simply but with meaning and not treating the earth like it's just there for our consumption, actually working with it because we're part of it, we're not separate from it, and we're killing it.
Yeah.
And we can't keep going the way that we're going because we will run out of resources, and then we'll be like, oops.
Yeah. But that's very hard to undo. Like once we get to that point, it's going to be a bit late.
So I think that now we're starting to realise that, climate change is real. We need to take action. Let's try and leave the planet better than we, It's all these things. It's literally about being aware. It's about being conscious of our choices, our decisions, and being a little less selfish, being a little bit more, All right, what's question number 3?
Last question. What is one thing you do every day that helps you become better?
One thing I do every day that helps me become better is, like you, I find something to be grateful for. So whether it's something tiny, it always is something small. I think the more I get into it, I'm appreciating the smaller things in my life. And then obviously, KAAIAA. I do KAAIAA every day. That helps me become better.
Yeah. So on that note, just kind of wrapping up, what's next for KAAIAA, or what's next for you? What's next for
so
Leah
much
Simmons?
is happening. So,
or that you want to talk about, that you want to make people aware of.
Well, the platform, we're growing the platform. We're bringing a lot more community stuff into the platform. So that's all underway. I mean, it's just this constant work in progress. Obviously, finding a team that resonates and, So we're doing that. In terms of Leah, I'm just continuing doing what I'm doing. I've got a few things in the pipeline that we're working on. I can't really talk about them too much at the moment, but just know that, watch this space.
Yeah.
Watch this space.
That's all we can say.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you
I
so
appreciate
much
your time.
for having me. It's been great.
Awesome.
All
Cheers.
right.